Kicked out at 19, blamed for a theft. 4 years later, my grandfather exposed their lies, and I became the heir to everything they tried to take. My father kicked me out on Christmas Eve for something I did not do. I constructed a life without him and believed I had left everything behind. However, my family's lies and greed came tumbling down years later. Before we get there, let me start from the beginning. My name is Liam Carter, I'm 23. And tonight, I'm heading back to the place I promised I'd never visit again. 3 years ago, my family booted me out on Christmas Eve. I'm traveling home today to celebrate my grandfather Edward's 72nd birthday. This is the first time I'll see my folks and Rachel since that night. The roadway is vacant. The sky was scarred with winter clouds, and as I come closer, my chest feels heavier. I'm not the same 19-year-old kid anymore. I'd constructed a little e-commerce firm, gained independence, and established a life outside them. However, no amount of achievement can soften the blow of treachery. The house was in pandemonium long before that night. My mother, Vanessa, was preoccupied with looks. Perfect decorations, banquets, and falsehoods. Rachel, my sister, was the golden kid. Spoiled, theatrical, and spiteful, as only siblings can be. If I breathed incorrectly, she mocked me. If I remained silent, she labeled me worthless. Vanessa constantly supported her. My father, Gregory, was a formidable attorney who intimidated judges and annihilated opponents. But at home, he remained mute. Instead of establishing limits, he let them to run the show. If Vanessa claimed I was lazy, he would agree. If Rachel had said I was a disappointment, he turned away. I learned to live around them rather than with them. I spent the most of that December immersed in scholarship applications, brainstorming ideas for a little internet company that I hoped would get me out of the house. Late at night, while everyone else was asleep, I'd sneak into Gregory's office to print paperwork and conduct research. It was the only establishment with a functioning printer and a reliable Wi-Fi connection. Christmas Eve dawned frigid and brittle. The tree in the corner was shining. The home was filled with the aroma of cinnamon and pine. Vanessa was in hostess mode, shouting instructions and cleaning wine glasses as if the Pope was arriving for dinner. Rachel strutted about in a fashionable coat she had requested as a Christmas necessity, taking pictures in front of the fireplace. I kept out of the way, attempting to help where I could while counting down the hours until the day was over. Gregory then beckoned me into the living room. "Where is it?" His voice was not elevated, yet there was something threatening about it. "Where's what?" I inquired, puzzled. "My watch," he said abruptly. "The Rolex GMT Master 2 is white gold. The one your grandpa gave me when I became a partner. $40,000, Liam. It's gone." I blinked. "I know nothing about it." Vanessa laughed sharply and without humor. "Of course not. That is always your answer. Acting as if you're too preoccupied with your small projects to notice anything." "I didn't do anything," I said. "I have been." Rachel cut in. "Don't lie. I spotted you at Dad's office last week, beside his drawer, presumably plotting something." "I was printing a scholarship application," I explained, my voice tense. "I did not touch anything." Vanessa folded her arms. "The ideal representation of mock worry. You have been creeping about for weeks. Desperate. Secretive. It is evident what you did." "What are they desperate for?" I inquired, fury coming in. "You've never cared about what I do. You simply want someone to blame." Gregory moved closer, hovering over me. "This is not about assigning blame. That watch means more to me than you would ever realize. And now it is gone. I did not take it." My voice cracked from frustration. "I didn't realize it was gone until now." "Liar." Vanessa's voice was chilly. "You've been a disappointment from the moment you were born. This is only proof." Rachel gave a harsh chuckle. "I told you, Dad. He's probably attempting to sell it to support one of his fraudulent business ventures." That was it. Something inside me broke. "You have no notion what I'm trying to do," I replied, staring at them. "I'm trying to make something of myself. I'm striving to be better than this." Gregory's eyes hardened. "Do not raise your voice at me. You have embarrassed this family for the final time." "I didn't do anything," I said. "You are accusing me of something I did not do." Before I could continue, Gregory moved to his desk, opened the drawer, and took out the empty Rolex box. He tossed it across the room. It collided with the wall near me and landed on the floor. "Get out," he ordered, his voice low and firm. "Pack your things. Leave this house. You're not part of this family anymore." The Christmas tree lights flashed in the corner. Carols sounded weakly on the stereo. Outside, snow began to fall. In the midst of it all, my father stood there. Not as a guy I adored or admired, but as someone who had decided I was no longer worth claiming. I murmured, "You are making a mistake." Vanessa hissed, "Was it necessary to keep you here for so long?" Rachel grinned, arms crossed. "Merry Christmas." I didn't utter another word. I went upstairs, packed a single duffel bag with my clothing and laptop, and exited the front door. Before I even got to the driveway, the door closed behind me. The porch light flickered out, like if they couldn't stand to see me leave. It was Christmas Eve. I had $80 in my pocket, no place to sleep, and no one in the house cared whether I froze in the snow. That was the night everything ended. And that night, I promised they'd never have influence over me again. When I got to the end of the street, it was snowing heavily. The lights from my house gleamed warmly behind me. Muffled Christmas music is slipping through the walls. A celebration that I was no longer a part of. My hands were numb, and the duffel bag's straps dug against my shoulder. The cold was harsh. But it wasn't what hurt. What stung was that they did it tonight, on Christmas Eve. Every home I passed like a postcard. Families gathered at dinner tables. The children tore into their presents. Through the frosted windows, I saw smiles, laughter, and warmth. I felt like a ghost passing through someone else's life. My breath became foggy in the air, and each intake burned. I wasn't sure where to go. I glanced through my phone and messaged Sam, a student with whom I had completed a few group assignments. Got booted out. "Is there any way I may crash tonight?" He responded within minutes. "Come by." His family resided in a little townhouse on the opposite side of town. My shoes were completely saturated by the time I arrived, and my fingers were stinging. Sam opened the door, wearing a Santa hat and bringing a dish of cookies. Behind him, his family was gathered in the living room to watch a Christmas movie. The fragrance of roast turkey and cinnamon permeated the air. "Man, what happened?" he inquired. "Long story," I mumbled. "Can I just crash on the couch?" "Of course," he responded, standing back. His parents came moments afterward, cordial, yet suspicious. "Liam, right?" his father inquired. "Rough night?" "Something like that." They allowed me in, but I could sense their unease. They chatted in hushed tones when they thought I couldn't hear. I ate the meal they offered, but their gaze kept traveling to me. A stranger in the middle of a holiday. As they exchanged gifts, I sat silently on the couch, looking at the floor. It was nicer than the cold outside, but it wasn't home. I departed the next morning before anyone was up. I texted Sam to thank him and tell him I would work things out. The weeks that followed blended together. I went from one friend's couch to another. 3 nights here and 4 nights there. I am always careful not to overstay my welcome. Initially, many were sympathetic. They supplied food, blankets, and counsel. But sympathy does not stay long. By the 2nd or 3rd week, the indications began. "We'll be having family visits shortly. I need my space back." By the middle of January, I had run out of places to stay. The temperature had plummeted below freezing, and the cold pierced deeper than I'd ever felt before. I spent evenings in bus stops, public libraries, and even behind a gas station, huddled up with my duffel bag as a cushion. I missed meals to make the money I had last longer. I applied for part-time work, but due to my lack of experience, most employers rejected me before I ever had an interview. 2 weeks after being forced out, I decided to return to the house, not to speak with anyone, but to get my old laptop from the garage. It was my only resource for scholarship applications and job searches. I waited till dusk, thinking nobody would see me. They did. Before I could reach the side door, a police cruiser drove into the driveway. Officer Hayes went outside, his breath apparent in the cold. "You Liam?" he questioned. "Yeah. Your mother says you're trespassing." "I'm not. I used to live here. I just came to get my laptop." "How old are you?" questioned Hayes. 19, he moaned. "Technically, they're still responsible for you. But if you don't want to go back, I'm not going to drag you inside. I'll flag CPS and try to reach a relative. Just don't come back here. They're not going to change. I just need what you need," lightly interrupting, "is to stop trying to fix something that's already broken. If you want a future, you build it without them." He released me from any charges. I never went back. A week later, I was seated in the public library, using a free computer, when a woman touched my shoulder. I turned around and for a few seconds didn't recognize her. Beatrice is my father's older sister. I hadn't seen her for over 5 years. Officer Hayes obtained my phone information from a previous report and phoned me as soon as he could, she added. Told me what had occurred. I knew your parents were selfish, but they were tossing you out on Christmas Eve. She shakes her head. You're coming with me. Beatrice had always avoided Vanessa and Rachel, calling them snakes in designer shoes. When she found out I was on the streets, she came to the library where I had been spending my days and gave me a place. It wasn't charity. Beatrice made it obvious. If I stayed, I'd have to carry my own weight. Within a week she had found me a part-time work at a tiny car repair. The task was demanding. Long hours, oil beneath my nails and sore muscles. But I did not complain. It was a lifeline. I began saving every penny. A month later, I paid a few hundred for a dilapidated, hardly functioning second-hand automobile. It wasn't a lot, but it was mine. And most significantly, it provided a roof when I needed it. When Beatrice's extra room was unavailable or I had late shifts, I would park behind a 24-hour grocery shop and sleep there. The grind became my habit, with garage shifts. During the day and delivery work at night. During breaks, I taught myself coding and digital marketing using free online classes. Every harsh remark Vanessa and Rachel made online about their trips, lavish dinners, and family Christmas photographs added fuel to the flames. Rachel once wrote, "The house feels lighter without dead weight." She intended it as a barb. I took that as incentive. By spring, I had saved enough money to start a tiny e-commerce business. It hardly sold, but it was a start, demonstrating that I could construct anything. A few months later, I received a prestigious technical scholarship. It seemed like the first true win I had ever achieved on my own. Months later, while returning after a delivery, I went by my former neighborhood. The houses were once again illuminated, and music spilled onto the street. I paused across from my family's home. The windows were illuminated, and laughing echoed from within, the same warmth I'd seen from outside. I paused for a while before zipping my jacket and walking away. They decided to kick me out. I decided never to return. 4 years later, I returned to celebrate Grandpa's 72nd birthday. The invitation astonished me. I hadn't communicated with most of my relatives since the day I left. My father never reached out. Vanessa and Rachel pretended I don't exist. But Edward was different. Even after I left, Dad sent birthday cards, sometimes even checks, and a handwritten message when I received my scholarship. He was the only person who treated me like I still mattered. I knew I couldn't say no when his card arrived with a handwritten letter saying, "I'd like you there. Please come." When I arrived, the driveway was already crowded. Vanessa liked mentioning expensive automobiles in her chats. The home appeared precisely the same. Same porch light, wreath, and pleasant warmth from the windows. Nothing had changed except for me. I parked down the street and sat in my car for a while to steady myself. Then I stepped outside, fixed my jacket, and approached the door. When I went inside, the cacophony hit me. Laughter, clinking drinks, and music coming from concealed speakers. As I passed, a few relatives whom I hardly recognized nodded politely. Others gazed as if they had seen a ghost. Vanessa spotted me first. Her smile disappeared. "Well," she remarked, holding a wine glass. "Look who decided to show up." "Good to see you too," I answered calmly. Rachel followed, dressed head to toe in luxury brands and wearing a phony grin. "I was betting you wouldn't have the nerve," she told me. "I guess I owe Mom $20. I ignored the jibe and sought for my father. Gregory was standing by the fireplace with a drink in his hand, deep in conversation with one of Edward's friends. He looked up, saw me, and his expression faltered for a second, then he gave a stiff nod. Nothing more. The tension in the room was thick, but I kept my head up. I wasn't the kid they'd humiliated anymore. Olivia, Edward's attorney and oldest friend, yelled behind me. "I'm glad you came." "Wouldn't miss it," I responded. She lowered her voice. "Edward's been working on something. Don't leave before the toast." I nodded, not sure what she meant. I spent the next hour avoiding conversations. Vanessa introduced Rachel to anyone who would listen as an up-and-coming entrepreneur, despite the fact that I knew from social media that her influencer projects were failing. My father pretended I wasn't there. Every time I passed them, Rachel's voice rose just loud enough for me to catch a word. Pathetic. Still bitter. Probably unemployed. I didn't take the bait, and I focused on the reason I was there, Edward. It was nearly 9 a.m. when the clinking of a spoon against a glass silenced the chatter. Edward stood at the head of the long dining table, his posture straight, his voice strong. "Thank you all for coming," he began. 72 years is a long time to be alive, and I'm grateful to have so much family here tonight." He paused, scanning the room, then his tone shifted. Slower, heavier, deliberate. 3 years ago, something valuable went missing from this house. A Rolex GMT Master 2. White gold, $40,000. My son's watch, which my grandson Liam was accused of stealing. Vanessa's smile faded as I spoke with an old friend who runs a pawnshop downtown, and he froze when I mentioned the watch, despite the fact that he had been thrown out and disowned. Recently, his voice tightened, and I discovered the truth. He told me that just after Christmas that year, a young woman came into his shop with a matching piece, nervous, shaking, and talking too much. A ripple of unease spread across the room, and Rachel's hands tightened around her glass. I showed him a photo of the missing watch, Edward continued, and he didn't hesitate. The same model, serial number, and engraving. And the name on the paperwork? He paused, allowing the silence to stretch. Rachel Carter. The room erupted in whispers. Vanessa's face drained of color. Gregory's hand trembled as he set his drink down. Rachel stared at the floor, frozen. We traced the serial number to the current holder using his records. After the police contacted them, the watch was returned. But I didn't stop there, Edward continued, pacing slowly as if presenting evidence in court. I wanted the complete story, so I asked for help, and we traced the money, which was routed to a debt collector to pay off a boyfriend's gambling issue. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner, and while all of this was going on, Edward said, his voice rising slightly. Another $10,000 was spent on a European vacation, first-class flights, 5-star hotels, champagne brunches, and $9,000 was lost in a cryptocurrency scheme that failed in weeks. The person you all chose to blame, the one you called a liar and a thief, was trying to survive with nothing. Liam lost his home, his family, and 3 years of his life because of a story you all never questioned. Liam, you were innocent. You always were. The room was silent. Vanessa's lips moved, but no words came out. Gregory stared at the table, unable to look at me. Rachel's eyes were glassy with amazement, and her face was pale. I felt a dozen eyes on me, but I didn't say anything because I didn't need to. The truth had been buried for 3 years, and now it was naked in the center of the room for everyone to see. I remained long enough to softly thank Edward. Then I slipped out before dessert, the cold night air hitting me like a wave. I didn't want to see the fallout. I didn't want apologies. The people inside that house had already shown me who they were, and as I walked down the driveway, I realized something had changed. For years, I'd carried the weight of their betrayal like a chain. But now, as snow crunched under my boots and the house faded into the distance behind me, I felt lighter. They had tried to bury me with lies. But tonight, the truth dug me out. I hadn't heard from my father in 2 days after Edward's party, and then the messages began, at first full of apologies. Against my better judgment, I texted Gregory an address, and he accused me of turning Edward against him, brainwashing the family and humiliating them in front of their friends. I ignored every single one of his desperate texts about how he didn't know the whole story, that he regretted everything, and that he wanted to make things right. When I walked into the small cafe near the old library where I used to study, he was already there, sitting at a corner table with a half-finished cup of coffee. He looked tired and older than I remembered, but there was still that same intensity in his eyes. The same man who had thrown me out on Christmas Eve was sitting in front of me as if nothing had happened. Liam, he began, standing as if we were old friends. I appreciate you coming. Let's just speak, I said, taking a seat. There was a long silence before he spoke again. I owe you an apology. His voice was low and measured. I was wrong about the watch that night, and a lot of other things. I didn't answer because I wanted to hear what else he had to say. I thought I was doing what was best, he continued. I believed what they told me, and when I saw you in my office, I let my anger take over. I failed you as a father. For a moment, I almost believed him, but then his tone shifted, subtle at first, then sharper. But you have to understand, he said, leaning forward. I was under a great deal of pressure. I had Vanessa in one ear, Rachel in the other, and I didn't know what to believe. And now you've gone and turned my own father against me. Do you have any idea what that toast did to me? The words hit me like a slap. What it did to you, I repeated. It told the truth. That's what it did. He exhaled sharply. You didn't need to make it public. You could have handled this privately. Instead, you humiliated me. Humiliated our family. Our family? I scoffed. The same family the Liam. I'm trying to fix this. No, I said. You're trying to fix how it looks. There's a difference. The conversation shifted quickly from calm to confrontational. He slammed his palm lightly on the table. You have no idea what it's like to have everything you've built fall apart because of one mistake. I lost clients. Friends stopped calling. People think I'm a fool. You are a fool, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. You believed a lie because it was easier than believing me, and now you're paying for it. Watch your tone, he snapped, the old authority creeping back into his voice. No, I said quietly. I'm done watching my tone. You kicked me out like trash and let them destroy my name. You didn't even respond to my messages when I begged you to hear me out, and now that the truth is out, you're still trying to blame someone else. The silence between us was sharp, and people at nearby tables began to glance over. Gregory looked around embarrassed, then leaned in. I'm asking you to move on. We are still family. We can rebuild. Family, I insisted. Family protects you. The family listens. Family does not throw a 19-year-old out on Christmas Eve without proof. His voice hardened. You're being theatrical. I already apologized. No, I said, standing now. You said you were sorry you got caught. I'm not sorry for what you did. He got up, his cheeks heated. You think you're better than me now? Because Edward's giving you money because you got a few scholarships. I don't think I'm better than you, I replied. I just know I'll never be like you. Something in his eyes shifted, anger, pride, maybe even fear. But he didn't stop. One day you'll regret this. One day you'll realize how much I sacrificed. I stared at him for a long time before answering. You didn't sacrifice anything. You threw away your son. I turned and walked toward the door. He called my name, but I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I stood outside the cafe for a few minutes, the winter air biting at my face. I should have been angry, but instead I felt clarity. My father hadn't come to apologize. He'd come to rewrite the story. He wanted forgiveness without accountability, redemption without consequences, and for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't owe him anything. I took out my phone and blocked his number, and the cycle was broken. 2 weeks had passed since the cafe confrontation, and I had not heard from my father since the day I walked away. But then Edward called, his voice calm, but there was something deliberate beneath the surface. I need you to come by the house, he said. There's something we need to talk about privately. I drove over the next morning, not knowing what to expect. He greeted me at the door with a firm handshake and led me into his study, which smelled of old books and cedar and was lined with decades of family history. On the table in front of him were several folders, each thick with documents. What's all this? I asked. Evidence, he replied. And a very big problem. Edward explained that after the truth about the watch was revealed, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more beneath the surface. The way Vanessa and Rachel had manipulated my father so easily, the way they lied without hesitation, had left him unsettled, so he began digging. Over the course of 2 years, hundreds of thousands of dollars had quietly vanished from company and personal accounts. It all started with a review of the family company's financial records, which initially appeared to be in order. Then, inconsistencies began to emerge, with small withdrawals here and unaccounted transfers there. Vanessa had been issuing company credit cards in her name, charging them with business expenses such as designer handbags, spa treatments, and private chauffeurs, as well as funneling company funds into side ventures, failed influencer projects, expensive vacations, and even a short-lived clothing brand that failed in months. And that wasn't the worst of it. Edward opened another folder and handed a paper across the desk. A hefty loan agreement taken out in Gregory's name, but the signature wasn't his. Forged? I asked, and Edward nodded. Your mother signed it. She used the money to bail Rachel out of a failed cryptocurrency scam. Edward leaned back and added something that caught me off guard. They hadn't just destroyed trust. They had been bleeding the family dry while blaming everyone else for their mess. $500,000 had disappeared in a single night. And you once asked me why Rachel ever pawned the Rolex in the first place. If they were capable of stealing so much, why bother? I nodded, the question gnawing at me. Because that happened before all of this, Edward said. At the time, they didn't have access to company accounts. Vanessa wasn't a part of the business yet, and Rachel didn't know how to move money without getting caught. They needed fast, untraceable cash, and they needed it immediately. He flipped another page showing bank statements. Her boyfriend was deep in debt, not credit card debt, but the dangerous kind, with loan sharks and threats. They needed tens of thousands of dollars within days. The company funds were too risky to touch at the time. Too many eyes, too much paper trail. But your father's, how about my father? I asked quietly. He's ignorant. Edward said. Or maybe he decided not to see it. In any case, he let them go wild, and now they've nearly destroyed all I created. I leaned back in the chair. What are you going to do? Edward's visage darkened. I'm cutting them off, all of them, he said literally. Over the next hour, he laid out his plan. His lawyers were already restructuring the family trust. My father's name was being removed as a beneficiary. Every asset, real estate, shares, bonds would bypass him entirely, and the money that was supposed to sustain him in retirement would be gone. Vanessa and Rachel would not smell a thing. They had their opportunity, Edward continued. And they demonstrated they couldn't be trusted with our family's heritage. I didn't know what to say. It was a major choice, not just a punishment, but a definitive judgment. There's one more thing, Edward said. I'm setting aside a portion of the estate for you. Not because you deserve it, but because you earned it. You've shown integrity when everyone else around you has shown greed. I shook my head. I didn't do any of this for money. I know, he said, placing a hand on my shoulder. That's exactly why you deserve it. The fallout was immediate. Within days, word spread that Edward had rewritten his will, and Vanessa was furious. Rachel spiraled. Her cards were stopped, her accounts depleted, her projects crumbling, and she wrote me a long rambling letter online one night screaming for assistance. She phoned Edward's attorney several times, threatening litigation, but none of it mattered since the documentation was airtight. Even after I blocked him, he kept calling from new numbers, leaving dozens of missed calls and voicemails that ranged from rage to desperation. In one, he shouted that I had turned Edward against his own son, and in another, he begged me to talk. I deleted it without responding. In less than 2 weeks, Edward phoned again. It's done, he stated simply. The trust is finalized. They're shut off. I asked how my father reacted. He's outraged, Edward said. But he still doesn't understand why this is happening. He blames everyone but himself. Vanessa is discussing divorce, while Rachel is drowning in debt. A week after Edward signed the trust, the shockwaves began. At first, nothing obvious changed, just a shift in tone when my father's name was mentioned. Calls were no longer returned, meetings were rescheduled, and people he once called friends suddenly became too busy. It was the kind of silence that always comes before everything falls apart. Within 2 weeks, the first cracks appeared. When word of the trust changes reached the firm and whispers spread throughout the legal community, an internal audit was called routine, but everyone knew why it was happening. Investigators dug into records and soon enough patterns began to emerge. Forgery, unapproved transfers, and missing funds. Vanessa's name was linked to embezzlement, and an investigation into Carter Holdings was launched, revealing every detail of their scheme. By the second month, the situation had exploded, with the media catching wind of it and making brutal headlines. Rachel's influencer brand was exposed as a shell corporation, and my father's reputation, established over decades, was wrecked in days. The firm suspended him awaiting an inquiry. State regulators began a case, clients broke links, and former mentors refused to answer his calls. In the third month, Edward's lawyers began the process of reclaiming the family home, which would take time but was unavoidable. Creditors called on a daily basis, accounts were frozen, sponsorships disappeared. Rachel's projects failed one after the other, and Vanessa's carefully curated image crumbled. By the 5th month, humiliation had become public. When the eviction notice arrived, Rachel absolutely lost it and raced onto Edward's property, shouting that he was ruining the family. Edward listened attentively before cutting her off with a single sentence. The family does not fabricate signatures. Families do not empty accounts or frame their own blood. This is the result of your choices. The house went on the market weeks later. Rachel's luxury SUV was repossessed. Vanessa was photographed shouting at debt collectors, and the pictures went viral. Rachel tried one last time to salvage her image. Vanessa filed for divorce in the 6th month after launching a second chance rebrand online, crying on camera about growth and learning from mistakes. Her sponsors and followers vanished, and she quietly deleted everything. She accused Gregory of emotional neglect and betrayal, hoping for a payout, but Edward's lawyers had sealed every loophole. The accounts were frozen, the trust was untouchable, and there was nothing left for her to win. Gregory's professional life was also over. No firm would hire him. His name was toxic, and the man who once preached control now had none. He left me a voicemail, which I never answered. She left, he said quietly. I gave them everything. I listened once before Gregory, stripped of wealth and reputation, was living alone in a small run-down apartment. I saw him once by accident in a grocery store. and he looked older and smaller, as if the weight of every decision he'd made had finally caught up with him. He tried to speak, but I kept walking, and there was nothing else to say. When we spoke, Edward seemed lighter. It was hard to watch, he conceded one afternoon. But sometimes the only way to stop rot is to let it collapse under its own weight. He was correct. None of us had destroyed them. We had not required to. They'd done it to themselves, one selfish choice at a time. Their demise was neither loud nor dramatic. It was slow, embarrassing, and conclusive. And for the first time since I was 19, I was no longer furious. I was free. Life following their demise was calm, almost unsettlingly so. For the first time in years, there were no furious messages, manipulation, or guilt-tripping. Just silence. And in that stillness, I began to create a life separate from them. I disconnected from all points of communication, changed my phone number, stopped reading the old email, and informed family that I did not want updates. It was not about vengeance. I really didn't want their disarray to flow into the future I was attempting to build. Work became my primary focus. The degree I had worked so hard for finally paid off, and I rose fast through the ranks of a cybersecurity business. I oversaw projects, recruited my own staff, and got the respect I had previously asked for. Every milestone seemed like confirmation that I had created something wholly on my own. I too went, not to escape, but to survive. From the temples of Kyoto to the mountains of Patagonia, each new location reminded me of how far I'd gone since that night. I sat in my chilly vehicle on Christmas Eve. The youngster who had previously had nowhere to go was now crafting his own tale. Edward and I became closer. He wasn't just my granddad anymore. He was my anchor. We frequently discussed the future of the family company. And for the first time, I became a part of that future. They tried to break you, he informed me one evening. But you built yourself stronger than they ever were. A letter arrived about a year later. It came from my father. I was really taken aback by the penmanship. Inside he confessed everything: betrayal, deceit, blindness, and the words I never imagined I'd hear: "I'm sorry." He wrote about Vanessa's remarriage and then departed without saying anything. Rachel seldom communicated with him. How empty my life had become. He stated he wished he could go back and alter everything. I read it twice and then put it aside. I did not react. Not because I loathed him, but because I no longer required anything from him. No apologies, no talk, no connection. I'd already forgiven him, in my own way. Forgiveness was not for him. That was for me. That winter, Edward and I held a little holiday meal. Beatrice arrived with cousins and a few close pals. It was a lovely, laughter-filled evening, just like the ones I used to fantasize of when I was younger. Beatrice raised her glass and exclaimed, "Here's to second chances, the ones we give ourselves." Her words stuck with me. My tale was never about vengeance. It was about rebuilding after being broken. It was about establishing that their decisions did not shape who I became. I haven't spoken with my father since the letter. Maybe someday I will. Perhaps I won't. If I do, it will be my decision, and not his. The youngster he tossed out on Christmas Eve has vanished. What remains is a guy who established a life without their consent, who realized that family is about commitment and love, not blood. And that man, whom they attempted to destroy, is now free.